Hello everyone, my name is Watanabe and I am a specialist in charge of cultural properties in Shiojiri City, a local government in Japan. My speciality is architecture. Today I would like to talk on the theme of townscape preservation and cooperation with local residents, with the subtitle of Townscape to Pass on to the Future. In addition to this lecture video, we also distribute an on-site video taken at the Narai site, which is introduced here so that you can deepen your understanding. Today, I will talk about these 6 topics. Now, let me introduce Narai Preservation District for groups of historic buildings. This map shows the locations of important preservation districts for groups of historic buildings throughout Japan. Nagano Prefecture is located almost in the center of Japan, and Narai is located at the center of Nagano Prefecture, where the number 37 is written. We can say that it is located right in the center of Japan. In the Edo period, from the 17th to 19th century, several highways were built by the Tokugawa shogunate, which ruled Japan. There were 5 major highways, and one of them, Nakasendo, where Narai is located, was a main road connecting Edo and Kyoto. It went through the mountains in the center of Japan, and 69 post towns were located along the way. Narai was located almost in the center of the route. This map, drawn in 1800, depicts the scenery of the post towns along the Nakasendo route. It is a valuable historical document to understand the post towns of those days, showing how the streets were lined up, the locations of the main buildings, the names of shrines and temples, and the names of rivers. This is an ukiyo-e of the 69 stations of the Kiso Kaido, painted during the Tempo era, 1830 to 1844. This is a scene of the post town Narai. It is not realistic, but said to be a scene based on hearsay. It shows the atmosphere of the shop. This is an illustration from a book written around 1800, in which townspeople of the time were amusingly depicted travelling along the highways. It depicts a comb merchant in a post town along the highway in Kiso. As a basic information on the post town of Narai, the residents often earn their income from the local industry of woodworking to make combs and others, rather than exclusively from lodging business. Accordingly, this type of business was very active in the area. They are lacquered combs, which were the main products of Narai at that time. The combs are made out of wood and decorated by Narai's lacquer painting technique to add value. The top one is a highly advanced lacquering technique called maquille. Some are simply coloured with lacquer, indicating that the craftsman was creating products for all kinds of users. This is an ukiyo-e of the Niyakawa-juku post town in the 69 stations of the Kiso Kaido mentioned earlier. It is more realistic than the Narai's picture, so you can clearly see the atmosphere of the townhouses in the post town at that time. Now, let's take a look at the current aerial photograph of Narai. The town was formed on the lowest plane of the river Terrace, formed by the Narai River, which flows from the left, south, to the right, north of the image. The upper part of the image is the west side, which is a steeply sloping mountain surface following the upper side of the river Terrace. The townhouses are built on the entire inhabitable land of the river Terrace, and there are about 250 houses in a row facing the Nakasendo Road. In the late 1960s, the uncontrolled loss of historical townscapes started in Japan due to the wave of rapid economic growth. Similarly, in Narai, the Nakamura family residence, which had historical significance, was about to be dismantled and moved to the Folkhouse Museum in the big city by the owner at that time. The local residents discussed the pros and cons of such a move, and many of them expressed their desire for the building to remain on the site. So the local government, Narakawa Village at the time, purchased the house from the owner and preserved it at the site. The original owner of the former Nakamura family residence had a large business as a lacquer comb manufacturing wholesaler since the Edo period. However, after the World War II, the owner moved to the city and rented rooms in this building to neighbours. Under such circumstance, the idea of relocating the building to the open-air Folkhouse Museum was brought up. This photo was taken when the building was rented out. The Nakamura family residence was to remain here. After that, the residents of Narai started to think about the future of their community, which has many historic buildings other than this house. This is a cross-sectional view of the Nakamura family residence at that time. The residents' desire to preserve the townscape led to the introduction of a new townscape preservation system in Narai called the Preservation Districts for Groups of Historic Buildings System, which was established by the national government. The former Nakamura family residence remains in Narai today in its original form as a symbol of townscape preservation. It is now open to the public as a public facility. We regret that we are unable to take you to the site, but please take a look at the inside of the house in the on-site lecture video. As I explained here, the system of preservation district chosen by Narai is not a system of designating and preserving individual buildings, but a system in which the municipality designates a townscape, a group of buildings within a zone, recognizing their value, and the national government selects and protects the ones with outstanding value. I will use this map to explain how the preservation area is established. This is the preservation area in Kiso Hirasawa, 2 kilometers north of Narai. As shown here, the area enclosed by the black bold line is first determined, and then the types of building and their historical values within the area are investigated to determine how to preserve the area in detail. Regarding this work, I suppose you have received an explanation on the specific classification and colouring in Professor Ueno's lecture in Theme 3. This map shows traditional buildings in colours, with main building of house in red, lacquer workshop for lacquering in yellow, and other historical buildings in blue. Based on this, a preservation and utilisation plan is developed. Next, I would like to talk about the subsidy system for restoring historical buildings in the preservation districts. Subsidies are available for the repair of historic buildings as long as it meets the designated repair standards. Even for the new construction or remodelling of non-historic building, certain subsidies are granted when they meet the landscaping standard set for the harmonisation with their surroundings. The percentage of subsidy is different depending on the type of project. The subsidies are 80% of the total cost for the restoration of historic buildings in accordance with the repair standards, and 60% of the expense for landscaping in the construction of new buildings or remodelling in accordance with the landscaping standards. Here is the excerpt of criteria for repair in the Narai area from the Plan for Preservation and Utilisation. This is also distributed as training materials for your reference. The minimum standard, which is not eligible for subsidies, is the permission standard. The standard for harmonising with the landscape is the landscaping standard, and the standard for repairing historic buildings is the repair standard. Built heritage is called listed properties in this system, and subsidies are provided for repair projects based on the repair standard. The landscaping project is to harmonise unlisted buildings with the historic townscape. It is conducted according to the landscaping standard. For example, subsidies are available for the remodelling part of the facade like this. Buildings in the important preservation districts for groups of historic buildings are wooden structures, in principle, so special fire prevention measures are required. Installation of fire prevention equipment is eligible for subsidies when disaster prevention plan is formulated and the project is carried out in accordance with the plan. The current status of Narai Important Preservation District for groups of historic buildings. This townscape has been preserved more than 40 years after its selection. This is the current panoramic view of Narai. The mountains are on the left and the Narai River flows on the right, as seen from the south. This photo was taken in the 1960s from the same location. This is a map showing the extent of Narai's preservation area. The designated area is 17.6 hectares. In terms of elevation, The left side of the map is higher and the area descends from Kamimachi, Nakamachi and Shimomachi. The Narai River is on the lower side of the map. Please remember the names such as Kamimachi through Shimomachi that will appear in the on-site lecture video. This is a photo of Kamimachi before the selection as Important Preservation District. Here you can see electric poles and cables. Here is the present appearance. There were no electric poles in the 17th to 18th century, so all the electrical facilities were installed behind the building so that it would not be visible from the street. Here is another photo before the selection. There are concrete ditches on both sides of the road. The current Nakamachi, the ditches are changed into culvert. This area was the administrative centre of the village during the Edo period, and the streets and the frontage of each house are wider. The on-site lecture video starts here, so please remember this place. This is Shimomachi area before the selection. You can see signboards on the facade of some buildings. This is an area where many comb makers and lacquer workers used to live and formed a craftsman town. The current situation. The modern signs are removed, and noren, a Japanese traditional sign like a short curtain, and wooden signs hang over the storefronts. Next, I would like to touch on the investigation aiming at the designation of the former Nakamura family residence as a national important cultural property. This is the building that created the opportunity for the preservation of the townscape. The Shiojiri City Board of Education has recently conducted another survey of the former Nakamura family residence in order to make its detailed evaluation as a cultural property in the occasion of the 40th year from the selection as Important Preservation District. As a result, it has just received National Important Cultural Property designation in 2020. 40 years after the initiative for preservation of the district, the new designation as an important cultural property provided an opportunity for the people of Narai to reaffirm the value of their community. Let's take a look at the layout of the former Nakamura family residence. This was originally a comb wholesaler, and the shop area where they did business faced Nakasendo Road. The kate was a kitchen with 2 adjoining rooms in the back leading to the courtyard. The second floor also had 2 adjoining rooms facing the street and 1 room in the back. Next, let's look at east-west cross-sectional view. The right side faces Nakasendo Road. The names of typical components of the part facing the street are shown here. This is a photo of the facade of the former Nakamura family residence. The front fittings are usually closed, separating the inside from the outside of the building. You can learn the details in on-site lecture video. In this way, by removing the lattice doors and the posts, The nakasendo in front and the shop area are unifiedly used. This is the appearance of shops in the Edo period as introduced in ukiyo-e pictures. Entering from the earthen floor, the second room is the kate, the room for cooking and dining around the fireplace. For the extraction of smoke, this area has a double height ceiling. This is the room called omotenakai, facing the road on the second floor. This space was usually used for the manufacture of lacquered combs, but the survey revealed that this place was also used as a lodging in the occasion when many travellers or a suite of feudal lord travelled and stayed in the post town. The results of this survey made a major factor for the property's designation as a national important cultural property. When the tatami mats in omotenakai were removed, spots of coloured lacquer were found on the floor by the window facing the street, indicating that lacquer work was regularly conducted in this room. Prior to the survey, the floor of these rooms was covered with tatami mats, and the role of these rooms was not clearly known. The fact that there are traces of lacquer only on the window side indicates this room facing the street would have been suitable for decorating the lacquered comb, as it was on the brighter side, since there were no electric lights in the Edo period, which was from the 17th to 19th century. The discovery of these traces was a major factor for the designation of this building as a national important cultural property, bringing proud feeling to the residents of Narai. This is a close-up of the lacquer spots. Red, blue and black-coloured lacquer is adhering to an area 1 metre from the window. You can also see it in the on-site lecture video. This is a certificate of designation from the Minister of Education, Culture, Sports, Science and Technology of the Government of Japan. For local residents, the increase in the number of nationally designated cultural properties in the region provided an opportunity to reaffirm their value. Cooperation with residents. The Preservation District for Groups of Historic Buildings system was designed based on various citizen movements to protect the historical environment that began in the late 1960s, and ordinances enacted by local municipalities as a direct response to these movements and efforts to protect the unique historical landscape of each region set a framework for the system. In other words, it is a system in which local residents and local municipalities take the initiative and the national government provides support for their efforts. With this background, you can say that the townscape preservation would not be possible without the cooperation of residents. However, after 40 years, this initial active attitude of the residents to preserve the townscape has often changed dramatically in recent years due to the change from the first generation, who worked hard to introduce the system to their children and then grandchildren. This is a major challenge in the preservation project. Although there is no easy solution, we believe that the only way is to closely communicate with the residents' organisations, such as the Preservation Association, to share the idea constantly. Furthermore, I believe that the preservation district system should not be introduced in a short-sighted way where there is no motivation of the residents and no preservation organisation. As a member of a local government, I always keep in mind that the residents are the main actors in the preservation of Townscape. This is the organisation chart of the Preservation Association and its role in Kiso Hirasawa, next to Narai. It should be noted here that women's participation in preservation is an important factor that cannot be dismissed, as women in Japan have a strong sense of responsibility to protect the home. Here, the opinions of local women are incorporated into the Preservation Association in the form of a women's division. Next, I would like to discuss the issue of vacant houses. Measures against vacant houses. In Japan, the decline in birth rate and aging population have become major social problems, and this social phenomenon can be a global issue. In the case of townscape preservation, this has led to a decrease in the number of residents who promote preservation and an increase in the number of vacant houses. However, it is also true that the selection as the important preservation district contributes to the lower percentage of vacant houses compared to the neighbouring areas. Another fact is that we witness many cases of converting vacant houses to other uses, or not a few people moving to the area to enjoy the townscape. Conversion of a vacant house into lodging facilities, as introduced in the lecture video, is one of the measures against vacant houses. However, it is highly controversial whether all the vacant houses can be converted into lodging facilities or not, considering the historical significance of the village's establishment. In addition, I think there is a big challenge for new residents in terms of immigration, whether or not they will be able to join the existing community. As you can see, there are a number of challenges in the preservation project, but we still believe that with the enthusiasm of the residents to preserve the townscape and the will of the local government to promote this as a major task, we can preserve the town for the future. As I mentioned earlier, townscape preservation is realised with people who use the houses in the town to live in. This is an event for tourists initiated by local residents after the area became a preservation district. We also find great value in the intangible aspects, such as this kind of event and traditional festivals. If only the buildings remain, it is not the genuine townscape preservation. This is the summer festival of Shizume Shrine, the head shrine of Narai village. It is a traditional festival that has continued to be held since early modern period. This is rather recent festival, which started 20 years ago, featuring ice candles placed in ice and lit throughout the town. This is to enjoy the intense cold of this area. In Narai, an area of heavy snowfall, the event ends with a fireworks display on the final day, along with snowy scenery. Although Narai is a place visited by tourists through these events, the people of Narai prefer to be visited by a moderate number of people rather than a large number of visitors. This is because many of the residents do not depend on tourism for their livelihood, but rather go to work in neighbouring cities. The preservation of Townscape is an integral part of their daily life. The Townscape preservation as cultural heritage is a long and deliberate project. As a local administrative organ, we always keep in mind that it is the residents who play a primary role in the preservation of the Townscape.